Welcome to Power Up Recovery with Nutrition. It is time to make nutrition part of the conversation. I'm your host, Christina Veselak, and I'm so glad you're here. Did you know that it's our brain's job to allow us to cope with stress gracefully? But to do that, it needs to be fed optimally. Have you ever wondered why so many committed people relapse or maybe even die? Why so many people on psychotropic medication still feel lousy and still have cravings? What if the missing piece is food, the right food? What if the right nutrients like amino acids or even eating protein every 4 hours could actually balance your brain chemistry and your mood without medication and support lasting recovery? In this podcast, we explore the powerful connection between feeding your brain well, mental health, relapse, and recovery from addiction. We will share insights from experts, inspiring recovery stories, and practical strategies you can use today. Whether you're in recovery, a healthcare professional, or someone passionate about emotional well being, this show is for you. Let's dive in and discover how fueling your body and brain with the right food, the right amino acids, and other key nutrients can fuel your transformation today. Welcome. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of Power Up Recovery with Nutrition. Discover all the wonderful ways that nutrition, whether it be food or supplements or even herbs, can feed our brains what our brains need to function optimally, to repair themselves, and to fuel our journey into a wonderful life. So today I want to introduce an old friend of mine, Matt Finch, who has a remarkable story, and many of the tools that he has discovered along the way are tools that I actually teach in my courses. Matt's actually going to be speaking at the upcoming conference on using herbs and nutrients for opioid recovery. So, welcome, Matt.
Thanks so much, Christina. I'm super excited. I love the podcast and I love recovery and I
I
love
know you do.
and I love talking about the brain. And yeah, so my story is not too much different than a bunch of people out there. I am a current recovery coach and I help people quit opioids and alcohol and other CNS depressants and problem behaviors too. Right now I'm
Mm,
working with a one man who has a dual addiction. He his addiction is a combination of alcohol in the evenings and also pornography and role play too. So these long
mm,
experiences with live action women on the other receiving end of the computer where they dress up. And so the long story short is we live in this culture where there's so many addictions, so many drugs and drugified behaviors
yeah.
that I'm glad that I escaped it. And how I got into it was I grew up in San Diego, California. I was born in 1979, and I grew up in the 1980s. And it was a great decade to grow up. What I do remember, apart from having a great childhood for the most part, boogie boarding at the Pacific Ocean and going to theme parks like Disneyland and SeaWorld and everything, what I remember is being very sensitive. I remember being a highly and I didn't have the terminology back then,
Hmm.
but I grew up a really sensitive kid, overly sensitive and empathic too. I could feel other people's emotions. I could
Yeah.
tune in with other people.
Yeah.
And I knew I was different. I had physical differences that were visual that everyone could see, and I was made fun of for those. Being left-handed was one of them. As odd as that is, some people would make fun of me for being left-handed. Certain scissors and notebooks are a hassle. But what I really got made fun of a lot was my carrot top. I had bright orange hair, not red. It was orange. And some girls used and guys used to make fun of me saying, "We want to play connect the dots on your freckles. Hey, can we play connect the dots?" And
Mm.
so I internalized a lot of that stuff. So I knew I was different because I had red hair, orange hair and freckles and got called those names, but I also knew that I was more sensitive than other
Sure.
boys, and I was very, very shy and introverted too. So I didn't have any of the terminology back then.
Hmm.
But I felt like God, because I did believe in God ever since I was young. I believe that God gave everyone else in life that certain something that makes them fully human. And God
Hmm.
didn't give me that. God made me different, and I was lacking that certain something. And I did internalize, and I did have the language to think about this at least. And so I thought I was lacking something, like a protective barrier for all the stresses of life. Uh,
Hmm.
Other people seem to be able to just not let things get to them. And I was just deeply, deeply emotional and like really intuitive, kind of almost so
Yeah.
intuitive that I would have dreams and premonitions that would come true often,
Yeah.
often too. So, long story short, when I got into the age of 22 years old, I had tried
So you
alcohol.
made it through adolescence?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Throughout high school, I smoked pot, Uh,
Hmm.
maybe about 15, I started smoking weed. And then I became a quote unquote pothead, uh, probably at 16. I remember telling my friend Joe Price, who was my best friend, and a small little circle of four of us dudes, Joe, Clinton, and Eric. I remember telling Joe after we had smoked pot 6 days in a row after high school at his apartment when his parents were at work. I said, "We just smoked 6 days in a row. We're officially potheads." And we like high fived each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
So pot, I used that as an enhancement smoker on and off as a teenager, but I was mostly just surfing and bodyboarding. I was really active. So yes, I did survive as an adolescent I listened to death metal, I downhill skateboarded. Yeah, papaya. So I was an adrenaline junkie, a pothead, and a death metal
Mm.
concert goer. And I had death metal t-shirts and I was just rebelling against the mainstream, even as far as back then. I
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
like the mainstream music. I didn't like the mainstream people would go to parties in high school. I didn't want to go drink beer at parties. I wanted to smoke weed, go surf big waves, listen to death metal, and hang out with my core friends. I didn't want to go socialize with a bunch of strangers. Like
Uh-huh.
that just seemed they would pay money to go to the high school dance and pay money to go to the high school football games. As soon as the bell rang at 2:10 p.m. at Point Loma High School, I was gone. You would have to
Yeah.
pay me good money to go back to high school. So that's
Yeah.
that's how I felt about it. So I was always kind of, skateboarding was popular and I started rollerblading. Surfing was popular and I started bodyboarding. Sublime and reggae rock was popular. I started listening to death metal. So, so I was kind of always
Oh,
different.
it's sort of one edge up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But then
Yeah.
but I always kind of, I guess I longed to be accepted and I didn't know it. And so when I was 22, I was a video game tester for a living. I used to work for Sony, literally sitting in a video game testing chair right in front of a TV. This is in the early 2000s now, with a PlayStation video game controller in my hands and thumbs, just getting total muscular breakdown, body breakdown, bags under my eyes. So
Yeah.
it was just a bunch of guys that lived with their parents. I lived on my own, but everyone else that worked there was guys. There was like 60 guys and one girl. Almost all of them were probably had never been with a girlfriend before or anything and were like grown men that lived with their parents. But I worked there for a few months and started selling White Widow cannabis from British Columbia that I had a good connect on. So this is really good pot. So all the video game testers smoked weed and we all got paid on Fridays. So one time when they tried my weed, they're like, "Oh, can I get some of this? This is way better than what we get." So I became the main salesperson to all the video game testers. And then when they invited me back to test the next video game,
Hmm.
I didn't go back because I had achieved my life's purpose, my dream job. I now
Yeah.
had my home-based business where I sold cannabis. I worked for myself, no boss, no one telling me what to do, no
Hmm.
time clock, no clocking in and out, no having to anything. And I loved it. I loved the money. I loved the free weed. I loved the entourage. I loved the power. I loved the ego boost.
Yeah.
And when the movie Blow came out with Johnny Depp, which is based on a true story about a man who became a really big pot dealer and then the biggest cocaine supplier, wholesale supplier for the whole entire world, I think, at least for America. And this is a true story. And my goal at this point was not to sell cocaine, but to sell marijuana to the point where I had mansions, women, lots of nice cars and things. And then I met a crew that I started to sell weed to that were alcoholics. They were total binge drinkers. And I had never had binge drinking friends before. I only had pothead friends. So when I started to hang out with these guys, I would smoke a lot of weed, but I would also binge drink. Then I downhill skateboarded one night, totally hypomanic on alcohol and cocaine. I My trucks were way too loose on my skateboard, and so I flew off this my board going 30 miles an hour down a really steep hill, flew like Superman, and I fractured my wrist, my left hand, and I'm left-handed. My scaphoid, in fact. So for the next 3 months, Christina, I had to wear a Velcro splint. So that the good part was I could take it off and take a shower and wash it off and scratch it. But the bad part was a few things. Number one, I could not surf.
Right.
Number two, I could not exercise except for like walk or jog if I wanted to.
So no way to get your adrenaline going.
No way to get my adrenaline going. When I was used to surfing and working out a lot, actually, even when I sold weed and even when I binge drank, I would still get lots of exercise and I would
Yeah.
still. So the pot, so the exercise and the marijuana, I think, was halting me from advancing in alcoholism.
Sure.
Now, this is the trippy part, Christina. So I couldn't exercise, I couldn't surf, but I also could not play guitar. And that was my creative outlet.
Hmm.
So, you know, empathic, intuitive, very creatively focused person that needs to express creativity, needs to use my physical body. So I could not do those things. The worst part was that when I smoked marijuana, when I had this fractured scaphoid and the splint on, was that it made my wrist hurt. It actually, instead of killing the pain, there was no pain. Then I would smoke weed and it would hurt and it would make me stress out and focus on my wrist that I couldn't shave, that I couldn't eat with my left hand, that I couldn't surf, that I couldn't play guitar.
Hmm.
I couldn't even make love to my girlfriend and, tip normally. So it was just really, and back then I was really weak. I was a very weak-minded person that, uh, I just didn't have a lot strong psychological skills. So I started to drink a bunch.
Hmm.
And then since the weed was having negative actions like that, those negative effects, I just stopped smoking weed.
Hmm.
And I replaced the surfing, the weed, the guitar, all that stuff with alcohol. Because I could do that with my right hand. I could drink as much alcohol as I wanted with no negative consequences, at least at the beginning. Yeah, negative consequences to my brain and body, but I didn't see those. They were out of
No,
sight and out of mind, and I didn't know
that's
those.
right.
But yeah, so I
Early
became.
stage addiction. It was still working,
Mhm.
but you'd lost all your other coping mechanisms and all your other ways of having fun and relaxing and getting your endorphins running and getting your adrenaline running and feeling alive.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm also extremely genetically wired for alcoholism as well. I've
Uh-huh.
had numerous, many, many, many. on both my relatives on my mom's side and on my dad's side. My both both my mom and my dad, they never got addicted to alcohol or anything close to it, but my grandparents did, and some aunts and uncles did, and to mental health issues and early death from addiction, the whole nine. So I was
Hmm.
biologically, genetically really predisposed. And I also, even, I did know that I was hypoglycemic too, but I didn't know it had any relationship with alcohol or addiction or anything like that. But I was also severely hypoglycemic. I had such bad reactive hypoglycemia, and even when I was in high school, I just ate a lot of really, really simple carbs and barely any protein.
Hmm.
And that's my nutrition was horrible when got into
Yeah,
drink.
yeah, yeah.
So I didn't
Set
last.
up. You had a starving brain.
I had a starving brain. And so then I became really quickly from binge drinking, alcohol recreational use to binge use to abuse. And then really quickly, actually, I became physiologically and psychologically dependent. And alcohol was my everything. It was my food, my water, my safety. It was like, babies have their babas, 40 ounces of cold Budweiser. That was my baba.
Hmm.
And yeah, then it graduated so I went to AA. My parents and some other people said, you got to go to AA. That's the only way to do it. And so I went to AA, and I actually did pretty good at the beginning because I was also facing a felony arraignment. I had been raided by the DEA. Uh, because I got sloppy as an alcoholic drug dealer. And then I got busted. The DEA had a search warrant, and I went to jail, but luckily I just got probation. Um, but one thing my lawyer had recommended was to start going to AA meetings and do 90 and 90 days and get signatures to prove that I was at the meetings. And thus he would be able to show the judge when it came time to my felony arraignment that I was doing work already. It's my first time ever getting in trouble with the law. And so, yeah, that all worked out. And I did have the pink cloud phenomenon that they talk about in early recovery. And I did find a sponsor and I did work the steps. Um, and I was living with my parents at the time, and it seemed like things were going to be good. Problem was is once my court case was over and I got probation, then I stopped going to the meetings. And then
Hmm.
about a month later, I thought I could control drinking again. And so really, that was when I was 24, and I didn't get better until I was 32. So for those
Hmm.
next 8 years, I was addicted to alcohol on and off, mostly on. And I would often black out. I would often get arrested. I have a grand total of 3 DUIs in 2 different states and 3 drunken publics in one state, plus the felony charge. It's like crazy. Once I got arrested once, then all of a sudden it was like I was a magnet to go into
Hmm.
jail and I couldn't stay out. And so I would go to AA and I would have some moderate to relative success with it. I never full measured it ever again. I only full measured it at the very first time I tried. So I half measured, so I gave it half ass attempts. I would just go to meetings. I wouldn't get a sponsor or work with a sponsor. And I didn't want to. I didn't resonate with it. I didn't want to go there for the rest of my life. And so I would try alcohol alternatives, Valium, Vicodin, a combination of Soma, a Percocet, and an Ativan. I was always afraid of pharmaceuticals until the age of about 22, 23. And then I
Hmm.
tried Valium and I liked it. And then I tried a Vicodin and I liked it. And I realized that benzodiazepines and opioid RX pills that weren't prescribed to me, but that I would purchase illegally and use, I realized that I didn't know any of the neurotransmission back then. I didn't know that all these are doing is plugging into receptors in our brains and boosting
Right.
neurochemicals we already make. But I did know that the combination of opioids and benzos made me feel wonderful, even better than alcohol alone. And I would not black out and I would not wake up hungover and
Yep.
I would not get arrested. I would not black out and do stupid things. It made me more creative, more empathic, more compassionate, more intelligent, more resilient, more adaptable, more energized, a better human being, more thoughtful of others. It made me Superman. It gave me
Uh, uh-huh.
either just opioids pretty much did that too, but opioids and benzos was
Sure.
that turned into heaven.
And they gave you enough buffering that you weren't quite so raw to the world.
Yes, it gave me the protective
Cocoon.
barrier. It gave me an endorphin, and I didn't know it at the time, but it gave me a strong endorphin shield. The opioids
Mhm.
and the alcohol both did.
Yeah.
An endorphin shield that helped to mitigate and really reduce or even prevent completely psychological and physical distress and pain,
Yeah.
emotional pain. It killed all those emotions and numbed them and made me simultaneously euphoric versus I had generalized anxiety that was moderate and social anxiety, which was severe a lot of the time. And so it also completely turned off those. So it
Mhm.
optimized my brain and it filled in my
Sure.
missing brain chemicals that I needed to feel good. And it seemed like other people didn't need that. And that was kind of a bummer, but I realized, okay, I need at least weed or alcohol or something. So for all those years, Christina, there was very little time that I ever was completely sober off everything. I would not
Yeah.
drink, but I would do weed and Valium, or I would not drink, but I would do a bunch of different pills, or I would not do anything but Valium. So I tried
Mm.
all these different rules, all these different, kind of putting rules on myself, putting limits on myself. And it always just ended me back to like full blown severe addiction to alcohol, which was crippling to me. At the very end of the addiction, so never having any long term or really even moderate success, I just had periods of abstinence, never really any substantial recovery. Because I never had any accountability really that was strong ever again, or a social support system because all my friends drank.
Yeah.
That was my main issue was when I wasn't drinking, I would still hang out with my friends who all not only drank, but were binge drinkers uh,
Hmm.
several times a week. So sometimes I would stay alcohol free, but a lot of the times I would cave into peer pressure, or I would just through my own volition, my own will, I would be missing out, FOMO, fear of missing out. I would be in the
Hmm.
moment, literally feeling like I was missing out, and so I wanted to drink so I could join in and not miss
Right.
out, but be a
Right.
part of. I wanted to be a part of that because big part of it is the connection too. So then the end of my addiction, I was opioid addicted in upstate New York. And it's interesting because for the first 8 years that I used prescription opioid pills unprescribed, illicitly, I never got addicted to them. I could always use them sporadically without ever getting addicted. And the reason for that is a combination of one, I didn't have a steady supply ever. And then, so people would get prescriptions and sell them, or people would have regular prescriptions.
A
But
little
then
bit here, a little bit there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit here, a little bit there. And I never really had much money too. I was always in poverty. So I couldn't buy a bunch at a time, even if I wanted to. But
Right.
then that all changed when I was 30 years old in upstate New York. And I'm a brand new dad to a 2 month old baby, Willow Renee Ryan Finch, the joy of my life. And the mom and I had broken up because she was cheating on me with half the town. And I had broken up with her. And I was really, really devastated over that. And now all of a sudden, I was an insomniac because I was staying up feeding the baby with the baba all night and then working all day at a restaurant, busy, fast paced restaurant and catering in upstate New York. And so now all of a sudden, I did have a steady supply of opioids, and I had a steady paycheck as a cook,
It's
and
beautiful.
I had a steady um, fatigue, a steady, deep exhaustion that totally took over my mind and body, which the opioids completely counteracted.
Hmm.
I got the opposite effect from both opioids and alcohol. I got opioid or alcohol induced hypomania, energy, increased mental, physical energy, belief in myself, resilience, creativity. Just, I felt superhuman on opioids. And so
All those lovely catecholamines and all that wonderful dopamine.
yeah, the combination of the dopamine, the catecholamines, the opioids, because catecholamines on their own would make me anxious. Endorphins on their own would make me relaxed. But the dopamine, the catecholamines, opioids, woo-wee, it's the tranquil energy. It's like the euphoric, sedated morphine combined. It's like morphine and amphetamine or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Well,
And
that's exactly what it was, kind of. Yeah.
so I was super dad. I was super worker. I was super energized and confident and not stressed. And I was smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee and at one point I was like snorting pills in the morning and then just chugging a bunch of coffee and it would make me go 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 go. Then I went through my first opioid withdrawal when I ran out of pills and couldn't get any more, and I didn't even know what was going on. I thought I was having the world's most massive panic attack ever. And I even went to the county mental health place that was right next to my work. My boss sent me home after I puked in the toilet, and he saw me. This is like 14 hours after my last dose of opioids, so early opioid withdrawal. And he heard me in the bathroom puke, saw my pupils. He said, "Yeah, man, you're not looking so good. You can go home." And then I ended up drinking a bunch of beer that day to be able to calm down. And then I woke up the next day and it was day two of opioid withdrawal and I was hungover and I was in the next few days I was in a world of hurt. I wanted to die. And then, my opioid addiction progressed, more withdrawals, and I started to lie and steal and pawn stuff. And then I ended up on heroin the last 6 months. The last 6 months, luckily I had moved back to California where I'm from. So we got out of that town in upstate New York and my daughter was here and the baby's mama was here. It was actually kind of a miracle. Her boyfriend was here, my girlfriend was here. But all of us, literally all four of us, were on heroin. That poor little kid, luckily my parents were not on heroin. And I was living with my parents and so was my girlfriend. So heroin addiction, Christina, I could function as somebody that was on pharmaceutical pills. Not only could I function, but if I had the money to get steady pills, I was high performance functioner
Yeah.
if I
Yeah.
could get it. On heroin, that wasn't the case because I didn't have the money to steadily get it, and it was really hard to meet up with the dealer sometimes, and that became my full-time job was
Mm.
trying to get the heroin for the day, and that drug wears off so quickly. The half-life, it hits you so quickly, but also wears off so quickly
Hmm.
that the dopamine rush is so quick and high, and it wears off so fast, and it goes plummets so low afterwards that it makes that drug really, really addicting. And I had never tried a drug that addicting before. And yeah, it ruined me. 6 months after getting addicted to heroin, I was laying on my back on my bed during the day around maybe 4 p.m. And my mom got a psychic premonition. She had actually, she told me that her spirit guides had told her the day before, 2 days before, that someone was going to die. And she thought it was her husband, my dad, John. Um, then she had this really strong premonition, go check on Matthew now. So she goes downstairs, goes into my room. I'm on my back. There's puke. I'm passed out. There's puke coming out of my mouth. My face is gray. My lips are purple,
Mm,
and there's vomit trickling, and I'm not breathing. She calls the ambulance. They get there really, really quickly, give me naloxone, which puts me into instant. I had overdosed on high dose methadone and high dose Valium, two long
oh,
acting, strong CNS depressants, and the synergy of those, the interaction is mega, not strong or severe, but a
right,
mega contraindication. So I had respiratory failure, and
right.
yeah, the naloxone worked, put me into instant. It ejected all the methadone molecules out of my receptors, and that brought me back to life. But then I was in the hospital for a week, the first 3 days unconscious, in a medically induced coma with pneumonia, a breathing tube in my down my
Mm,
throat, a bunch of different a lung infection because I had swallowed a bunch of vomit. And yeah, I came to maybe 3 or 4 days into the week stay at the hospital, and I kind of slowly came to reality. And my parents are both sitting down, looking in my eyes lovingly, and I'm like,
good
I'm
parents.
noticing where I am. I'm like, and then they told me, they said, you know what you did? And I, that shot, waking up, you've heard about a rude awakening, of course. We all have. Well, that was
Little
the
bit of a bottom, Matt.
the rudest of all awakenings, and I'll requote what J.K. Rowling said at a commencement speech she gave for a university. Same thing. That moment from realizing what I had done after they told me and being in that situation in the hospital with the hospital, just it all hit me so powerfully that that became the rock bottom, which then became the solid foundation upon which I rebuilt my life. Because fortunately, I didn't have a lot of trauma after that. I had something called post traumatic growth syndrome, PTGS.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah. So I had a realization that, oh boy, my addiction has hurt some loved ones before, but usually I've hurt myself. First, you know, now I almost left a 18-month-old baby girl without a dad for the rest of her life while her mom's addicted to heroin living on the streets, literally living on the streets.
Yeah.
And also my parents and my siblings and my friends would never have me again. So that was I realized how selfish, self-seeking, self-centered that had all been. And I also did realize that it was because I was so sensitive. I had these mental health issues, all brain deficiencies, come to later find out that I could fix, repair, replenish, rebalance, rejuvenate, optimize uh, pretty easily, actually, with some nutrition and
Yeah.
some neuronutrients. And so this last time, what made it stick was a combination of post-traumatic growth. I was living with my parents. I was in school to become a drug and alcohol counselor. I was unemployed, so I didn't have to work anymore, at least while I was in school. And I ditched my old circle of friends. I deleted the heroin dealer out of my phone. My parents gave me an ultimatum to to kind of synergize with my intrinsic incentives to quit, which was, get fit, get healthy, get my life together, become a responsible, healthy, stable father for my daughter, because she needs me in our life. Then my parents' extrinsic incentives too. If we see you using any drugs, alcohol, even marijuana, you can smoke cigarettes and caffeine, that's it, but nothing else. Then we'll kick you out and we'll take you to court and we'll get custody of your daughter. And so now
Good for
I
your
had
parents.
those
Good for
extrinsic,
your parents.
yeah, they got some
Hmm.
good leverage on me. So
Yeah.
leverage can be really powerful if somebody doesn't have the intrinsic desire and motivation to do it on their own. That's where, so they offered that, but also their support, practical support,
Yeah.
emotional
Yeah.
support, financial support,
Yeah.
and
Sounds
accountability.
like you have wonderful parents, Matt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 They're legendary. They are the founders and operators of Self Heal School, selfhealschool.com. They have a natural healing herb school that they do online courses and they have live classes where they teach from their home. Classes on intro herbalism 101 all the way to advanced clinical applications. My
Mhm.
mom teaches a herbal clinician program. My dad teaches a nutrition program. My mom teaches prosperity consciousness, meditation, and then
So,
they have,
Matt,
yeah,
was it them then that at that point in your early recovery that they started getting you onto the nutraceuticals and the herbs and everything you needed at that point in time?
exactly. Yeah, my family saved my life. So, but it was a combination too of extended family even. So my parents, my mom knew the nutrition she was feeding me when I was going through post-acute withdrawal.
Yeah,
She was feeding me, like steamed brown rice and broccoli and cauliflower and protein and like this melted organic raw cheddar cheese and like grilled organic chicken breast and fish and salmon
yeah,
and protein shakes. And so she knew uh, that really well. So did my dad, and she would make me herb tea with all these sedative herbs that I had no idea, but she was giving me stuff that was boosting my GABA and my serotonin and my dopamine. And then, so that was all going on. I was taking herbs, teas, liquid extracts of herbs, but not in uh, alcohol tincture extract, but glycerin
right.
extract. Then also, my brother from another mother, my older brother, Tom Finch, is my dad's son. He was birthed by another woman before my dad met my mom. And so he's my brother from another mother. And that mother of my brother sent me two supplements from Apex Energetics: Dopatone, which had neuronutrients to boost dopamine and
Yeah,
endorphins, dynorphins, and enkephalins. So, and then another one, Gabatone, which had
yeah.
neuronutrients to boost
And of course,
GABA.
Apex is a wonderful company.
Yeah, and I had no idea that there were amino acids that increased the same neurotransmitters that drugs do. So this was all, then I started to learn that pretty early on too. But yes, Christina, my parents saved my life in more ways than one. And my brother from another mother, both he and his mother are also heavily responsible for my recovery because as soon as I started to take the neuronutrients that started to resupply my brain quickly with healthy neurotransmission balance, from the very first day, and especially the second day I was taking that combination,
Uh-huh.
things went away. And then I started to feel comfortable in my own skin. Then my anxiety went away. And then because the Gabatone, I worked this out by mathematics, simple mathematics, which I can do. I was taking like 70 to 80, up to 100 milligrams a day of lithium orotate, which is there's 10 milligrams in one capsule, I think, or one serving at least of the Gabatone.
Hmm.
So I was taking not just neurotransmitter boosting supplements for dopamine, endorphins, and GABA and serotonin, but also lithium orotate was stabilizing my mood and creating neurogenesis and
Hmm.
increasing my BDNF, brain derived neurotrophic factor, to regrow my prefrontal cortex, you know, insight, willpower, behavior regulation modification, volition area. And my mood became extremely stabilized, grounded, and I was in equanimity. And I started to work out and lift weights and exercise, and the rest is history. So I became a strategic intervention coach certified, which is Tony Robbins, the type of coaching that he does in his coach training program. I became
Hmm.
certified in the advanced certification for the high phytochemical food healing system, or also known as the Conquering Any Disease System by Jeff Primack at Supreme Science Qigong. And then I became his advanced certified teacher of his Qigong form too. So I really went down this path of traveling the world, attending seminars with personal development seminars, Qigong and high phytochemical diet seminars, the
Hmm.
Reiki energy massage yoga seminars, and business seminars. I became a counselor, worked in treatment, saw the almost 100% failure rates, saw the huge burnout rates of the counselors, of the doctors, of the nurses, saw how heavily focused, how much paperwork there is, how much regulations, and also my scope of practice and my ethics. I can only talk about, certain things AOD counseling can do. So I didn't have the ability to talk about nutrition or amino acid therapy or anything like that. Of course, I
Which
could
is
have,
tragic.
which is
It's
tragic.
tragic and criminal.
Sometimes I would write down notes to people as they're leaving, like, hey, look up, I'm not recommending this or anything, but just look up this supplement benefits and just check it out this weekend. That's as far as I ever went because I was serious about that stuff. But ultimately, that led me, that hunger to actually help people holistically versus
Hmm.
just give them medication and counseling or
Right.
just, the psycho, social, and spiritual pillars only. Or at the place I was working at long term, we were just doing just straight up psychosocial and it was really ineffective or medication assisted
Because
treatment.
it's all they know, Matt. They have no idea that there's actually a third leg of the stool. And there are all these amazing things we can do to support our brain health and healing.
Yeah, yeah. And when I would bring that up at meetings, the clinical director,
Mm,
they never wanted to hear about it because it was all
mm.
about how can we get as many people as possible here and then give us as much money as possible and stay here in treatment as long as possible. So what that meant for some people is how can we get as many people in San Diego County as possible to start drinking our methadone? How can we get their dose as high as possible, as fast as possible, so they're chained, liquid handcuffed to the clinic? And then how can we retain these people for forever until they die? Keep them on methadone. That was literally the clinical director and her aboves, her higher ups. So that was not my goal. My goal was get everybody off methadone and naturally or integrative medicine. So yeah, I became a private practice coach. In 2014, I launched opiateaddictionsupport.com, and now that has like 350 articles.
It's an
Most
amazing website. I
Yeah,
love that website.
thank you. Thank you. Yes, and I was a website total beginner, tech. I was computer beginner actually. And so I found a online course on Udemy that was free and it showed me step by step how to build a website, how to put a blog on it, how to do blog posts, how to put Google Ads, AdSense in there, how to do affiliate marketing, how to create a digital product. And I was so beginner at the beginning. The guy doing the videos with a screen share would do one little thing, press one button. So I would watch him and I would pause it and then I would go to my window and I would do the thing and I would go back over it. It was really slow moving for a long time, but then I started when neurons fire together, they wire together. You recently interviewed someone on this show who's a brain expert on the neuroplasticity of addiction and how
Uh-huh.
addiction is such a neuroplasticity issue. It's we get addicted, it's like disempowering neuroplasticity. Recovery, healing the brain, that's empowering neuroplasticity, the reversal. And so
It's
my
amazing. By the
neurons,
way, we've got just about 10 more minutes.
sure. Okay, thank you for that. Yeah. And so my neurons fired together, wired together, fortunately, with the blogging and the website stuff. And I started to get really fast at it and I became successful. Within 1 year of blogging, which, by the way, everyone, my friends, my family, especially my mom, they all told me, "Why did you leave your counseling job? You went to school for a year for it. You were going to do that forever. You were helping people. This is a pipe dream. You have this is just this is never going to work out. No one makes money blogging. And in fact, at the time, the statistics were that around 81% of bloggers never even made $100 ever. And so I was going to prove all them wrong, but I also knew I wasn't fired up in doing this to prove them wrong. That was added energy to my fire, but I just knew. It was a
Uh-huh.
knowing, it was very in early addiction recovery. I was always knowing exactly what I was going to do, and there was nothing stopping me at that phase of my life, at least. So I tripled my counseling full-time income, part-time blogging after 12 months. Look,
Uh-huh.
unfortunately, the blogging money only lasted for a few years. I still make a living. Uh, I still make money from like the digital opioid courses and stuff and the affiliate marketing stuff too, but hardly anything because the Google updates and stuff. My website used to get a lot of traffic. Now, very little traffic, but that's fine because now I'm doing all sorts of recovery coaching, group coaching,
Mhm.
one-on-one coaching. So nowadays, here are all the things I have going, and we'll talk about my upcoming keynote speech at the conference, or not keynote, but talk at the conference on opioids and detox protocols.
Yeah, because
Today,
people have no idea that you can use nutraceuticals and herbs to effectively, quickly, and moderately comfortably detox people off opioids.
right, right, yes, yeah. Most people just think for opioids, their only solutions are to really, really suffer, or to go get on methadone or Suboxone or fentanyl or the Wiseman method or NAD plus or ibogaine, and all of
Right.
those, yeah, they're not convenient by any means, and often they're really expensive and extremely inconvenient and timely. So yeah, I love helping people quit opioids, and I love people. I have so much compassion for people in this situation because those opioids, detoxing from them, papaya is resonating with this. The body really wants to hold on to those things. I've gone through opioid withdrawal, alcohol withdrawal, methamphetamine withdrawal, nicotine withdrawal, SSRI withdrawal, and cannabis withdrawal. And and benzo withdrawal. By far the worst, by a long shot, withdrawal I ever did was opioid withdrawal. It was the most severe and the longest. And it's even more severe for people coming off of the long acting opioids. I came off short acting. So yeah, it's the fentanyl epidemic is crazy and it doesn't need to be like this.
Well,
But
it doesn't. And the fact is that people get tied to Suboxone and methadone for life because they don't know. By the way, introduce us to your bird.
papaya, I got from PetSmart in Hawaii, in a city where I lived called Kaneohe, which is on Oahu on the windward side of the island, where it gets the most rain and
Hi,
very
papaya.
lush, beautiful area. And
Oh, beautiful.
yeah, so she's my
Amazing.
sidekick and my co-host. She chimes in when she wants to, when she likes what we're talking about, or when she resonates with something. They have the intelligence of a 5-year-old human child.
Yeah, yeah. This is pretty cool. But as I was saying, people, get onto methadone and Suboxone, and the whole hype is, this is how we treat opioid addiction, and this is how we save lives, and look at all the lives that have been saved. And I'm not saying that, okay, there aren't some people whose lives have actually been saved by these drugs. Absolutely. But the price that's paid is now being tied to them for the rest of your life. And they're still artificially screwing with your brain, right? They're not fixing anything. And to me, it's so tragic that people don't know that they don't have to be tied to these forever, that there are ways to get off them, and that there are ways to actually rebuild your endorphin systems so that you don't need them anymore.
Right.
And that's where you come in, Matt.
Yeah, that's where I come in, and yeah, it's a trip. They're the opioid replacement medications, and they're replacing the opioids that the person, so Suboxone, Subutex, methadone, etc. They're replacing the opioid that the person is addicted to, but and it's long acting. So yes, they're much less addictive, and yes, they cut down on overdose, and they cut down on sexually transmitted illnesses, and they do a lot of good. But they're certainly not only are they not a cure, but they greatly exacerbate the biochemical imbalances, and
Right.
those are they cause oftentimes opioid-induced endocrinopathy, which is one of the most prevalent opioid-induced endocrinopathy, one of the most prevalent disorders that people on opioid replacement medications have that are in methadone clinics, especially with methadone. Yet it's one of the most underlooked or even not known about things. So most doctors don't
Can you
even
describe it? Describe
opioid-induced.
it.
Yeah, yeah. It's an endocrinopathy where it is a lowering of a really hardcore dysfunction of our endocrine system, so much so that people will experience a host of potentially and often moderate or severe psychological and physical symptoms. Some of them are depression, hair loss, menstrual uh, irregularities,
In
uh,
women.
osteoporosis, sweating, profuse sweating, insomnia,
Mhm.
suicidal ideation, teeth falling out. Let's see,
But also really low
weight gain.
testosterone in men.
Yeah, weight
Really low,
gain. Well,
really
yes,
low testosterone in men, right?
so it's lowering of the testosterone in men. I'm not an expert on the female hormone system, but this is crazy. I had a female patient on methadone who told me this from the beginning. She didn't say the term opioid-induced endocrinopathy, but she was telling me all these long-term side effects of methadone, and I was like, "Really?" I'm like, "I don't think that's true. The doctors that work here, they would know about that if it was true." And this lady knew, and so I had another patient, a man who was really overweight, and he told
Hmm.
me, and he had been on methadone high dose for years. And he had told me that he went to an endocrinologist, and the endocrinologist prescribed him testosterone replacement therapy. And he said that his symptoms that he believed were from the methadone, which were, and opioid induced endocrinopathy, all the signs, he had it severe. So his excess weight started to melt off. His muscles started to increase. His depression went away. He started to crave. So it's so messed up, Christina. It's ridiculous. Not only are these people being, offered these opioids, but oftentimes they should be checking all the time for signs of opioid induced endocrinopathy and then doing the appropriate treatments. For example, for men, they often will get them on TRT. For women with
Hmm.
opioid induced endocrinopathy, oftentimes they'll prescribe them either DHEA or they'll
Hmm.
recommend an opioid rotation, switch them to a different type of opioid, or they will actually give women testosterone replacement therapy too, but
Sure.
only is about one fourth or even less the quantity that they
Yeah.
would give to a man.
Yeah. You just need a tiny bit for women.
Nice, nice. And so I didn't know any of this stuff even the whole time working at the methadone clinic. And yeah, but so the medicines, what long story short is this. You can come off of opioids actually, like you were saying, Christina, moderately or relatively comfortable. In fact, I have worked with many people that were on in between 300 to 600 milligrams of oxycodone or the equivalent. That is a huge That is a huge dependence, really, really high. And I've helped many of those people have moderate or relatively comfortable home detoxes or detoxes at treatment programs. And so, what I found to be some of the most effective ways for the acute withdrawal, if someone's going to do a cold turkey withdrawal, some of the most effective ways are high dose liposomal vitamin C.
Vitamin C.
Mhm.
Hmm.
They did studies back in the 1990s, I believe, on high dose vitamin C, originally using sodium ascorbate. Dr. Howenstein, I believe his name is. He started to give this to his IV heroin users for withdrawal. And yeah, it knocked out cold turkey heroin withdrawal. It made it go from severe to mild to moderate withdrawal symptoms. And
Yeah.
so the high dose vitamin C theory is that
And you
it
can do that IV, can't you, Matt?
you can do it
Use
IV
IV
too.
vitamin C?
You can do
Yeah,
IV. And in fact, Dr. Ken Starr and also at Ken Starr MD Wellness in Arroyo Grande, California, and also Springfield Wellness Center in Springfield, Louisiana. They're both NAD plus treatment
right.
programs, and they do infusions of high dose vitamin C, NAD plus, glutathione, B vitamins, HGH even. So yeah, I love
Mhm.
and that's another thing for quitting opioids. Whether someone's tapering, which is the systematic and more slowly reducing the opioid dosage over the span of weeks or months or even years for some people, infusion therapy can work for tapering, micronutrient infusions, these natural tiny nutrients that we get, the absorption when you get nutrient infusions is so superior. So it's
It
like you
is.
give your body and your brain a great makeover. So yeah, you can get that. You could do a high dose vitamin C at home with ascorbic acid powder or sodium ascorbic acid powder, but both those are kind of hard on the stomach in the amounts you need to take to relieve
That's right.
in the frequency for relieving opioid withdrawal. But like you said, the IV and like I said, the liposomal vitamin C, those both do not typically irritate the digestion at high dose vitamin C. Also, there's some really good herbs and other
Yeah.
supplements for quitting opioids too. The especially things like when people are quitting the anxiety and then the exhaustion. At first, when someone quits opioids, the anxiety and insomnia are really bad and fear.
They are.
So the really, really good sedatives like passion flower extract and
Mhm.
chamomile, all the benzo herbs, lemon balm, valerian root,
Right.
magnolia bark, anything
Yes.
that we could. One one client that is coming off alcohol. The other night, I had her make. Check this out. Eight 8x. So the number 8x strength lemon balm tea. Lemon balm is.
It grows in my garden.
Mhm. And she drank this and she said it was like taking an Ativan, the same strength. So you can make concentrated natural benzo liquid concentrate doing it that way. You just get a bunch of the herb and not as much water, and then drink it like that. So you can do papaya. That's way too loud. But then there's also the low energy thing, the exhaustion when people quit
Right.
opioids. Come here, baby. There's a
That's
bunch of
right.
there's a bunch of crows flying in circles. Yeah, the
Okay.
energy, and then the energy, the post acute withdrawal,
Withdrawal. That's where the
anhedonia.
tyrosine comes in. So I tell people 2 weeks later, when people can't get off the sofa, that's where you bring in the high dose tyrosine.
Christina, I'm really curious. Have you heard about the Thomas recipe?
I've not.
Oh, this will be a great little story. When I was addicted to opioids in upstate New York, um, I did have a computer. I didn't know how to do anything other than go on websites and I think I knew how to upload pictures, but maybe that was my
Uh-huh.
girlfriend. Anyways, so I looked up opioid withdrawal remedies. Back then there was no articles. This is a long time ago. There was forums though. This is back when you'd search for something and you'd see all these forum threads. And in a forum thread, someone had posted something called the Thomas recipe, like the name Thomas,
Right.
Thomas. And it was a recipe by opioid addicted man named Thomas, and he had shared it online, and he said it was a great withdrawal protocol for quitting opioids cold turkey. And I used it, and it worked phenomenally. And I actually used it with a
Isn't
bunch of.
it?
So this is the Thomas recipe. For the first few days, you take Valium or another benzodiazepine a few times a day as the sedative for the anxiety, the sleep, the appetite, relax the stomach, everything. Imodium AD or the generic version, which is loperamide HCl, which is an anti-diarrhea, which also it actually
Opioid.
yeah, so it goes into it passes the blood-brain barrier, but then it gets immediately pumped back into non-central nervous system circulation. And yeah, like you said, it's an opioid, but only on the intestines. And so
Mhm.
the Imodium AD would prevent the diarrhea and prevent your stomach from cramping because you had opioids in your stomach. The benzos would prevent the anxiety or mitigate the anxiety and the anhedonia because it's dopamine and GABA. And then a multivitamin. This is for the first few days, and also hot baths every day. And then after, I think it's after 4 days or after 5 days, then you add vitamin B6 and L-tyrosine to counteract the post-acute withdrawal
Uh-huh.
malaise, the anhedonia and the malaise, that exhaustion. Yeah,
Yeah, because you've
L-tyrosine.
used up, do you realize, because you've used up all of your norepinephrine during the withdrawal process, because too much norepinephrine is what's causing a lot of the withdrawal symptoms. So
Mhm.
you get profoundly depleted, and then you have to replace the norepinephrine with the tyrosine.
Right. You're bringing up, I think I learned this from Dr. Charles Gant in his book, and he was saying something like that feeling of burnout. It's
Yeah.
literally from all of those neurotransmitters, the norepinephrine being overused and literally being burnt out from production. You
Yeah.
can't, so it's
Yeah.
literally the mind body burnout. You're literally burned out of neurotransmitters. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
It
yeah,
is,
I'll
and
be.
we can replace it with the aminos.
Mhm.
Well, this has been amazing. And I think you and I could probably talk for a couple more hours
Oh yeah.
about this really fascinating stuff, which we will do at the conference.
We'll do it at the conference. Yeah, so I'll be speaking at the Feed the Recovering Brain 2025 Summit, effective addiction treatment and sustained recovery, these powerful nutritional strategies. So my
Yeah.
segment is going to be on powerful nutritional strategies for quitting any type of opioids. I'm going to cover the word opiate, the word opioid. What's the difference? Is there a difference? The types of opioids, the classes. We have opium derived opioids, we have semi synthetic, we have fully synthetic, we have short acting opioids, long acting opioids, we have medication assisted,
Kratom.
we have kratom. There's so many different. Oh, we have tramadol, these atypical opioids, we have tyneptine sulfate. There's so many. So I'll go a little bit into that, but really the core part of the talk is going to be on the mainstream treatments, how they're not working, and how people can use these natural with nutrition, with herbs, with amino acids, with infusion therapy, with natural biohacking, and with assisted biohacking therapies. How you can get off any opioid no matter how high your dose is, no matter how long you've been on, or no matter how high or long your clients or patients have been on them, and how they can do that with actionable, really, really proven strategies too, that have been tested and proven time and time again that work. I
Yeah.
would love to see free clinics in every major city of the United States doing these opioid cessation protocols where people can come in, get detoxed naturally, maybe with some medicines too if needed, and then be able to leave there all replenished with their catecholamines, their endorphins, and everything. It's possible to do that. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Pretty exciting.
Hmm. Hmm.
Pretty exciting. All right, Matt, thank you so much for joining us because this was, I'd never heard your story before. And I'd heard tiny pieces of it, but I'd never heard the whole story. And it's really a remarkable story. So thank you for sharing that with us and everything you've learned and everything you're going to be sharing with us about the power of nutrition to overcome oh, to overcome life's overwhelming impact on us.
Hmm.
When we start out life, when we just don't have that buffering system, when we just don't, our brains don't have what it takes to just do life.
Hmm.
And so we want to turn to all these other things. We need to turn to all these other things for relief. But once we finally give our brains what they actually need, all of that gets taken care of.
Hmm.
And that's why I do what I do. And I think that's why you do what you do.
Hmm. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast. I love it so much. I love your show. I'm so honored to be a guest, and I'll be sure to share this with a bunch of people so they can check it out
Please do.
and watch your other episodes too that are all so good. I encourage if anyone listening or watching likes this episode, look at the rest of the episodes because there's several now before this one, and they're all so good. So thanks,
Yeah.
Christina, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you all. And as Matt said, please check it out, like us, share us, and come to the conference. Thank you for tuning in to Power Up Recovery with Nutrition. I'm Christina Veselak, your host, and I hope today's episode has inspired and equipped you with new insights and tools to support your recovery journey or practice. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others who could benefit from the knowledge shared here. Stay connected with us for more episodes filled with practical advice, expert wisdom, and inspiring recovery stories. Remember, nutrition is a powerful tool in mental health and relapse prevention. Power up your recovery today. I'm Christina Veselak, and I'll see you next time.